Let's talk about AI photography. Press the start button. That's about as good as my acting gets, Michael. That's about it. Do you think I get a part in the new Terminator?
I don't think so. I think you're going to lose out to even an old Arnold Schwarzenegger for that role.
I'll be back.
Listen, I'm expecting the phone to ring any time now. This time next year, see that space behind me? It's going to have an Oscar on it.
Okay.
Right,
Hopefully
listen,
for AI.
AI.
I don't know.
We are no experts in this, but it's in the news. So I decided to do a little bit of research and say, hey, do you want to talk about it? And it wasn't something that particularly worried me or anything like that. You know, AI photography, what's it got to do with me? So I did a little bit of research, and in about 3 minutes, man, I was worried.
Well, first of all, you and I, and probably 99% of the other folks that are doing photography, even if they're shooting film, have all used AI photography. All of us. The second that you use this to take a picture, you've used AI photography.
Explain?
Well, I'll explain it. Apple actually, when you turn the camera into portrait mode, Apple's machines already put that information into the the chips and such. So when you get that blurred quote portrait background, there's your AI photography. So it's already here. Plus, anybody who's using a mirrorless camera that has facial detection, more AI. So that's already built in. That's already built into the majority of the cameras, that are currently on the marketplace.
So what we're saying is that if we ditch AI, we lose face recognition in our cameras.
I think that's probably the case. From what I was reading, I actually was shocked because here I know that there's some people that say I'll never do AI, but like the first time you use this, you've already crossed the line.
Okay, so what we're saying is AI is not just about to come. AI is here and is built into the equipment that we're using every day.
Yep. And again, anybody who uses Photoshop, the second you use that masking button in Lightroom or in Adobe Camera Raw to click your background, that's AI. The neural filters in Photoshop, all AI. I did some reading. I did some reading about some of these different Photoshop, these different photo apps on the marketplace now, and we could talk about that.
Oh, listen! I just before we started this bit of a podcast here, I thought, you know what? I'll have a just quick look on the App Store. Is there some AI photography tools on there? Is there some AI photography tools on there? There's hundreds of them. I mean, literally for free. You can just download some apps that will just start taking backgrounds out, changing the way things look, changing the way you look, putting you somewhere you don't want to be or you do want to be. It's staggering how much stuff there is even for free there. So if you're paying for stuff, you could create just about anything.
Well, I think the creation part is going to take a little more time, even though they're getting there. But I mean, Google makes no secret of the fact that if you buy one of their phones, you can remove people and things already using the phone. So
Yeah, and
again,
the thing is, people just don't realize that's AI is what we're saying.
yeah, that's AI. All of that is machine learning. I mean, it had to get into the code somehow, and it's not the coders that are doing it. It's the computers that are doing it. That the coders are helping code that into the actual product itself. I mean, there was something called Arsenal. And I'm sure a bunch of people that are mostly landscape photographers will probably be familiar with it. And it was a company that I believe is in England, and it was a Kickstarter that they did. And what they designed was this little tiny black box that fit in the hot shoe of your camera. And you hooked a cord into it and you stuck it into the side, kind of the same place that you would have hooked a a shutter release or a cable release, or the same port that you would plug the camera into a computer so that you could so that you could do different things like the exposure or shooting an image using that cord from a computer. Well, they were pretty much involved in putting millions of bits of information inside this little box that would help you take great exposures of landscapes. And they were also one of the first people that did an exposure stack where you could actually tell the camera where in the different places that you wanted the camera to focus for those exposures for that focus stack.
So that was AI. That was AI driven, was it?
Yeah, that's all AI. I mean, imagine being in the woods and seeing this beautiful pathway into the woods. You could literally put a camera on a tripod using that Arsenal product, and you could say, I want you to focus here. And then 10 feet past that, I want it to focus here, and I want it to focus here, and I want it to focus here. And then you could have it focus on specific trees and the mountain. And you could basically stack an image using that product where everything's in focus. Front to back.
So that's the early stuff, is it? That's the early stuff.
Yeah, that's and that's been around now for about 4 or 5 years. I believe they just put out a second product recently. I bought the first product and used it, and I thought it was pretty interesting. Now and again, that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's just the tip of the iceberg.
Well, it is, yeah. So let's start with a basic question, and then what I've done here, I've got some pros and cons just to go through first of all. So this is the basic question: yes or no? AI, is it good for photographers?
It depends.
You, my friend, should be a politician.
I don't want to be a politician, but I mean, you need to ask different photographers. What about a photojournalist? What about if your eyes are the only witness to an event, and there's millions upon millions of people depending on you to give an unedited version of the event that took place, a photo that was done right when this event took place? Do you want that picture to have any AI in it?
Okay, that's interesting. Let me just say, I did an interesting thing here. Well, I think it's interesting. Maybe nobody else does, but hey, I asked AI if AI is good for photographers. Okay, so I went into one of the chat ones, one of the big chat ones, and said, and it said to me there were pros and cons, which is interesting. That it would say that. So let's just go through the pros. It's kind of, if you think about it as an extension of Photoshop, what you would do, with your your adding and taking things away in Photoshop, it's not actually that different. Sort of other apps like Apple, it's like, as you mentioned, Apple itself, or Photo Leap or Canva, lots of creative apps are already using AI, or Video Leap, Photo Leap, that kind of thing. It's giving you an AI option already, just to use as a creative tool, just like photoshopping one person's head onto another. That's one line, isn't it? And I think you've touched on that, haven't you, with the Apple phones? The next thing is streamlining workflow. So photographers that maybe do loads of picture headshots one day, and they all need a slight tweak to the color cast or whatever. That would streamline editing and filing as well. If you're doing sort of an internal picture library at a company that you work for or something, you can get it to categorize pictures just by what it can identify in the pictures. Save you a whole lot of work opening individual files and saying, yeah, that's a tree, no, that's a dog, no, that's another dog, no, that's a person. So that's something you could do. Image enhancement.
Can I respond to that real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
I don't have a problem with photographers that do, wedding jobs or grip and grins or portraits, or headshots using AI. Because remember, you and I started with film. You and I basically used to shoot the job, put the film in the processor. Okay, we'd have a day or two to do other jobs, and then we'd get the film back from the processor. Then we would mark up what we wanted, send the proof sheets back to the processor. So it wasn't a constant swirl of activity. Now, us photographers don't do that anymore. We shoot the picture, and we've now become the darkroom. So for anybody who can take the burden of production off their shoulders and work smarter and not harder, I have to applaud them. I mean, and again, for somebody that's doing headshots, I mean, let's face it, a majority of the headshots that are done anywhere around the world are probably retouched some way or another. So again, using a software like Imagen, which is something new, where there's editorial photographers, there's conference photographers, there's grip and grin people, headshot people. They upload thousands of pictures to this company called Imagen, and it learns your style of editing, because when they come back, you tweak it, and that information goes back to them. They claim that you can go through or they can go through, clean up a picture in about a half a second per picture.
Well, I kind of get that when you're doing, we've all done it, haven't we? We've been to a company, they got 400 employees and they need a headshot of everybody. So you set up some lights, you have a constant background, and pretty much the AI can work out within 10 pictures, if you do the first 10, kind of what you want it to look like, and then emulate that for the rest of the images. But me personally, I work in the PR fields, and generally my pictures are very different. I can do a job and supply, I was working at an airport at the weekend, and supplied maybe 80, 90 images from a job, and some of them were a plane landing, some of them were indoors, some of them were sort of ribbon cutting, some of them were speeches, on tungsten lights, and then the plane taking off again on the runway on completely different weather conditions to when it flew in 2 hours earlier. How can it do that? They're really different. It can't, it can't know how I want them.
It definitely sounds like that job was complex, and it probably has a lot of differences from one photo to another. But as you said, if you're a headshot shooter and you've got constant light, no lights are changing, the only thing that's changing are the people that are sitting in the chair, and you do 300 or 400 of those in a day, or if you're shooting grips and grins and you're in front of a backdrop, and again, people are just shaking hands, and there's not much difference with the lighting or where they're at or the placement of the subjects. I think that if some of these companies that are making these promises can actually pull it off.
But what I would say, Michael, is if I was sitting in front of my computer with doing 400 headshots on a white background, I would do the first one and automate it. So you can in Photoshop go to automate. You can set up a preset for a bunch of actions, and the action would be open the picture, resize it, color balance it to this, and resave it, and tell it to do everyone in that folder, and in like 30 seconds it will do the 400 pictures to exactly the same action you've just saved.
I'm sure that the color and the color balance and most of the stuff will be the same. But what about what I'm thinking about is outside that box that you've just described. What about flyaway hair? I guarantee you that 50% of the people that you do headshots for are going to have hair that are going to need a little bit of touching up here and there.
Reflections in glasses. Yeah. I see where you're coming from. Yeah.
So if AI can go in there and say, okay, there's a bunch of flyaway hairs there, but it's all white background anyway, we're just going to take those out.
Yeah, and of course, all there's a certain amount of people that will sit in front of me saying, I've got a spot here today. Can can you take that out?" Or "Oh, my eyes a little bit red today. I've got a bit
Yeah.
of an infection. So AI could do all that.
I guess. I mean, but again, if you're doing pictures for identification purposes or if you're doing photojournalism, you got to draw the line somewhere. And I think that you need to make sure, or, whoever needs to make sure that it's just like, like trying to make a Xerox copy of a banknote. That there's special inks and things in banknotes that these copiers see, and the copiers won't make a copy of it. I think
Okay.
that the same thing should take place when it comes to a bona fide news image.
Okay,
And
I'm gonna ask you to hold that for a second because I've got a whole load of things. I've got pros and cons, and then we're going to go to cons on news imaging because that
okay,
is something that comes into the bad section of AI. So let's just do the good bits first. We're covering the good bits, and that's next image enhancement. And I'm talking about things like Topaz and Photoshop are putting betas in now, and that taking you've got a 900 mm lens, and the bird you're trying to photograph is small in the frame, and it's in a really dark place, and you've got some noise coming in, and it isn't quite sharp in the area you want. You can whiz that. I mean, I've seen the stuff coming out of Topaz AI, which is just insanely good. They can take all of that noise out and then suddenly tweak the sharpness back up. And I'm kind of thinking, there's a certain part of me thinking, well, it's good because it takes the noise out for you, but also, isn't it good because actually, Nikon might sell you a 900 mm f4 lens for like thousands and thousands of pounds or something, but actually you could take the cheaper lens, the one that's like 5663, that just costs maybe a tenth of the cost or something, and think, well, okay, I'm going to have to put my ISO up and it's going to go a little grainier, but actually I can just run it through Topaz and take the grain out and sharpen it up.
I agree. I agree with you there. I do. I mean, there's always going to be those that are going to want to buy the best glass that money can get, but there's going to be some others that are enthusiasts or people that do photography on the weekends that have a passion for wildlife. I mean, I know you do work for a zoo. I mean, it wouldn't. I don't think it would be prudent for you when you do. You do work. I don't know how many times a year you do work for the zoo. I don't think it would be prudent for you to go out and buy a $25,000 lens when you can buy a cheaper one and use Topaz to get rid of the noise. I mean, it makes much more sense. Now, if you're somebody that breathes and sleeps nature photography, and you're outside and that's your profession, well, sometimes you got to buy that screwdriver that costs a bit more money. But I agree with you there.
Yeah, yeah, and of course the other thing is, you can drop your £1,000 lens and think, darn, I've dropped the lens. It's just bounced off. It's just bounced off the car park as I'm getting in the car, and I'm not thinking I've just lost a $12,000 lens. I'm thinking, oh no, I've lost a $1,000 lens. I have to go and buy another.
Well, at NPS, I used to be known as the impact damage king.
You've gone through a few cameras, have you?
Oh, let me tell you, back in the day, I could tell you which lenses bounced better.
That's for another video, folks. Right.
Exactly.
Listen, object and face recognition, and obviously that has big implications. I mean, I'm not going to go down the kind of the route of whether we have the right to store people's images and GDPR and all that kind of thing. At the moment, I just want to talk about the positives of object and face recognition being emotions. Obviously, it can pick people out in a crowd who look particularly angry or whatnot, but also and that's a surveillance kind of stuff. A camera can be set up in terms of a security or something to pick out human faces, so it just doesn't keep getting tripped by cats and foxes and things at night. But also medical Obviously, if it can, if AI can look for certain anomalies or sort of cell structures or whatnot, then that can be used very quickly to identify, diseases you would have thought, or early stages. And also quality control. If you're making widgets in a factory and you want to make sure that every widget is coming off the production line exactly the way that it should, and then you can set up cameras to do that have got parameters. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I used to do thousands of passport pictures a year, and I was around once they stopped letting people smile on their passports. And the word I got was that the reason they stopped people from smiling on passports years ago was because most of the municipalities, and I have a feeling that all of them now worldwide that have the budgets, are all using facial recognition software to make sure that people say who they are. So back in the day, apparently when someone smiled, it would throw those logarithms off. So the phrase that, and I'm not going to tell you the country that actually started most of this, they came up with a phrase called a neutral facial expression. So everyone who's had a passport done in the past 15 years, when you've been told not to smile, when you've been told just to look straight ahead, no expression on your face, it's because of that. But now remember, some of the technology that you're talking about, particularly when it comes to looking at people's faces and maybe possibly diagnosing maybe some sort of a ailment that they've had. I believe that years ago it was either Minolta or Olympus they had certain things that they could shoot in your eye that would be able to see if you were having some certain types of diseases with your eye. So, they were using some of the same technology that were in light meters, handheld light meters for you film photographers, to actually help and aid medicine when it came to what was going on with certain parts of people's bodies.
Wow. So what we're saying, in essence, here is much in the same way as you put an Apple Watch on, and it monitors your heartbeat and whatnot. And actually, you can set it up to say to you if there's an abnormal heart rhythm or something, and to say, look, go and see your GP because look, we're tracing your heart rhythms here, and there's something not quite right. So your watch can do that for you. So what we're saying is you could have eye detection on cameras that actually, if it detects something, an eye as being sort of showing signs of some sort of disease somehow, it could send you an email to say maybe that person that you took a picture of, maybe you should say to them, go see an optician or something, because the camera might have picked something up not quite right about your eyes. Is that possible? Is that what we're thinking?
I'm sure it's possible, but I don't know if I don't know if I want to be the person that's going to break that news to somebody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sometimes you talk to people about certain ailments that they may or may not be having, and they might take it out on again, don't take it out on the messenger.
Yeah,
that kind of.
No, absolutely. Okay, right. So those are all kind of positive things, aren't they, to do with AI? And we're 25 minutes in, and we've talked about how these positive uses and whatnot. Now, dun dun dun. Let's talk about the dark side. There's some frightening stuff, and I'm listening to a lot of things and podcasts and whatnot. And the guy the other day that put out that interview with the guy from Google. It was all part of setting AI up with Google. He was kind of scratching his head, saying, hey, I'm not sure if this is a good idea. We need to stop and think, particularly with this open AI.
Open AI is actually probably where a lot of the AI is going to come from when it comes to photography.
Okay, so for people listening, as I know it, look, I'm a photographer. I don't know anything about computers and whatnot, but I understand that OpenAI is AI that is learning as it goes along. It does things and gets stuff input to it, and it outputs answers, and it learns as it's research, as it's doing things as it's going along. Allegedly somebody was telling me a story about OpenAI was given a task recently, and it had to do something. I can't remember what it was, but it had to do something in this task, and at some point it had to go online and buy something. But of course, one of these, you are not, make sure you are not a robot, came up. And this is a story I can't validate whether I'm not saying it's absolutely true. I'm saying I heard this. So leave us a comment if you know something about this and whether it's true or not. But the AI couldn't do that. It couldn't tell. It couldn't see the screen. It was a robot. So what it did is it went on to one of those websites where you can hire people. And they'd given it access to a certain amount of money to do this task, and it hired somebody for $5 to answer the question. It sent them the picture, and it hired them to answer the question: which of these blocks has got a sidewalk in? And that's how it got round it.
Well, I just wanted to say that OpenAI is instrumental with the use of DALL-E 2. So DALL-E 2 is one of the bigger platforms where you can generate photos by just kind of telling it what you want. So OpenAI, I have a feeling that OpenAI is going to be instrumental when it comes to AI for photography moving forward.
Okay, so let's talk about the negatives. So obviously, the first thing is machines can only really replicate, is what we're saying, but they can't bring creativity into play. You need to tell them what creativity you want. They can create it once you've told them what you want, but at the moment, we don't think that they have the ability to use creativity.
Well, I got a feeling that it took a number of years for computers to figure out how to generate photos that look great. How long will it take for people to get the information into a computer where it could learn what creative directors think? I mean, all it needs to do is, see some college textbooks or some books that have been written by creative directors, and then it could take that information in, and you might be able to have a creative director in a program before.
Right. Okay.
Long.
So we're saying that we don't believe that it's going to be that long before they can be creative.
They're increasing the speeds and the memories of computers every 2 years almost. I mean,
Right.
Look at Apple. Apple's computer speeds from last year have almost doubled.
Right. Okay. Well, let's move. Oh, hello.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. That was AI calling to say it's not going to have any problems with creativity in the future. Not to worry.
It was AI calling saying that creative director you want is could be uploaded at any moment.
Right. Let's move to the next bad boy. Ethics. The loss of traditional skills and the inability for people to correct things when they go wrong, when there's a technical failure, when AI doesn't work. Will people lose the skills to be able to use traditional photography because they're relying on AI too much?
Well, this is an hour-long conversation, but I'm going to say that people have already lost skills from the darkroom. Remember, you and I, when we first started using Photoshop, and we were probably the first wave because of our businesses. Remember the lasso tool?
Yeah.
The lasso tool has almost been replaced by click here and we'll mask out the background. I mean, how many backgrounds did you use the lasso tool to mask out on your own?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so yeah, you're going to see some people, losing skill. I wouldn't be surprised if Adobe and some of the other software manufacturers start to toss away some of the tools that you and I grew up with. And when I
Really?
say
Yeah, and just you replace them with the AI tools on the tool board box.
exactly, exactly.
Oh, right.
I mean,
Okay.
again, it's a whole, again, you're talking about a huge expanding universe. Now, ethics, you already know where I stand. I mean, I don't want a photojournalist who covered some atrocity, changing anything in the picture. I mean, it's bad enough as it is online when people are already blotting things out when you're trying to read a news article where they're creatively cleaning it up so that you don't see what's in the picture. You just see bits and pieces of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a problem with the ethics of that part of it. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm going to just try and upload this picture to to my computer, which anybody doing a podcast normally would have obviously done a while ago and have it all here ready. But that's clearly not me. So let's get that open. And then
Two old guys in Europe talking about AI.
let's see if I can do this. I don't know. That it really concerns me. News really concerns me because first of all there was that Pope picture, the Pope in the puffer jacket. I put it on the screen now. The Pope
Right.
wearing a long white puffer jacket. People thought this was real, and I was reading in the Guardian. A guy saying, "Look, I pride myself on working in news for a very long time and being able to spot fakes and things that are real and not. But I thought this picture was real. I thought the Pope, and I thought, yeah, he sat down with the kids. He's in a cold environment, he's got this big puffer jacket on, and it was AI. Somebody just created it, and it went viral, and so many people saw that. And then, of course, you've got the photography award, the Sony award, a lovely image, really super image. Of a woman with, I think, a mother, an older woman or mother behind there. I mean, really nice. And then he said, "Look, I can't accept the award because it's not a photograph. I created it in AI." Right. So, and he did that, I guess to create a debate about this.
Well, I think that was really great as far as him being ethical about it. But moving forward, as far as competitions and contests are concerned, maybe they should have an AI category, and because that way you can delineate and keep things in their separate boxes so that people know that this was partially created by maybe bits and pieces of photos and partially created by computer.
But where do we go with this, Michael? Because I don't think I'm understating. I don't think I'm overstating this, where I say actually, Western society is built on free speech, and actually, if we can no longer believe anything we see in our newspapers and on our television and on our phones, on the news feeds anymore, if we don't know if it's real or not, what does that leave us?
Well, we're already starting to go down that road, man. There's already talk about censorship on the internet where there's countries that are willing to jail people for saying things that are not true. I never thought I would ever see that happen. Now, granted, it's not great if you're going out and spreading misinformation, but it takes away that whole aspect of free speach. So it's a conundrum.
Can't it be used as a weapon of war as well? I mean, obviously there's a conflict going on in Ukraine at the moment, and I've seen in newspapers. I don't know this for myself, but I've seen that there have allegedly been fake pictures of stuff happening.
Well, there was that one fake picture or some news that came out of that war that's going on, where there was a missile that landed in Poland, so they said it landed in Poland, but it didn't. Remember, that happened a couple of months ago.
You know, so
So
I
yeah,
mean, it's a real worry with news gathering because how then are we going to be able to believe what's actually going on?
I agree with I agree with you 100%. 100% agreement. There has to be some sort of. I mean, maybe the editors need to get better. Maybe the editors need to make sure that the photographers that are taking these images understand that if they manipulate them in any way, they'll lose their jobs.
Yeah,
And
but now, now that's interesting because you're assuming it's the photographer that manipulated the image to put it out. But here's an interesting thing, and let me just grab my phone here. Sorry to keep looking down, folks, but I've got notes here. Okay, I've got it here now. Right, I said to AI, how could AI images be regulated? And it said, we need to create clear guidelines. We need to establish clear guidelines and regulations for the collection, use, and distribution of AI images, and clarify the responsibilities of the AI developers, service providers, and users in respect of copyright and intellectual property rights. And we need to implement watermarking or metadata. AI generated images could be required to include visible or embedded information attributing the source and authorship of every image that is AI created. And watermarking techniques could discourage unauthorized use and provide some sort of traceability. Copyright protection and licenses, they've got to strengthen copyright laws and explicitly cover AI generated images because they're not covered at the moment. It's just a woolly photography term at the moment. And they need to develop license mechanisms specifically designed for AI generated content, enabling proper attribution and compensation for the original photographers. And monitor and enforcement, it said you've got to establish mechanisms to monitor and detect unauthorized use of AI generated images and enforce penalties and legal consequences for individuals or organizations found to infringe copyright or intellectual property rights. The ethical AI development and deployment, it said you should think about encouraging AI developers to incorporate ethical considerations in their algorithms and adhere to responsibilities for data use practices and develop frame rates promoting transparency, explainability and accountability in the general use of their AI images. And finally, it said that international collaboration and standards are vital. It said we've got to foster international collaboration to establish common standards and regulations for AI generated images. And we need to facilitate discussions right now. We need to start having the discussions. And I hope if anybody is interested in anything we're saying about AI today, please share it. Not because I want the views, but I think it's really important we get as many people talking about AI generated images, what they mean, what the fears are, and it's really important we get that conversation as wide as possible. I mean, this is even AI saying this. I asked AI these questions, and it's basically saying we need to facilitate discussions among governments, organizations, and experts to address global challenges relating to AI images. That is an AI text robot saying what needs to be put into place about AI photos, about AI images. It's staggering that, even AI is saying, look, we have got to put the brakes on here. We have got to get governments. We've got to get international cooperation. We need globally to talk about actually AI generated images because they have the potential to cause a huge problem.
sure,
Discuss.
I agree. I agree with most of what you've read there. I don't see how people that are in the business or even news gathering business or people that make their income strictly from photography, where copyright and registering the images are paramount to them having a retirement income, because as pictures that you shot 20 years ago sometimes get used, and that sometimes becomes the bulk of your income when you finally put your camera down. So said a lot of very interesting things in its response to you. I'm quite
Well,
impressed.
I also asked it another question because I just wanted to be clear on this. I'm thinking, where do they get the pictures from? Where does AI get the pictures from? So I said, does AI use photos from the internet without photographers knowing? I asked an AI chatbot that, one of the biggest chatbots. I said, does AI take people's pictures from the internet without the photographer being aware? And it said, AI image recognition and web scraping. AI algorithms can be trained to recognize and analyze images from various sources, including the internet. Web scraping techniques allow AI systems to collect and process images available online, often without explicit permission from photographers. So is AI stealing our images?
Possibly. I mean, image theft has been going on for as long as the internet's been around.
Okay, I've got a good one here. Can I just give you an analogy?
Go for it.
Lots of social media and online stuff says, well, look, there's something called fair use. Okay. And what that is basically saying, including, on YouTube, they say there's a fair use policy. And when I looked at it, it basically says, as long as you don't use something in its entirety, if you take something small and create something new with it. So therefore, if there's a live stream of a court case or something, like Johnny Depp case or something, there were people online doing YouTubes as that was going out live, as it was streamed out live, but they were commenting on it. They were giving their opinions. So in actual fact, they weren't just streaming the thing live, which wouldn't have been right, but because they're giving a specific opinion on it, they were creating it into something new. And it seems to me that fair use seems to be, yes, you can take something that was created by somebody else, as long as you change it and create it into something new that you have created, that's deemed fair use. That's kind of how it seems to be. So if I'm taking a picture of a beautiful park and it has a lake, and then I say to AI, could you put a crocodile in that lake? And it searches around the internet, finds a crocodile that's at the right angle, that fits in, and pops it in the lake. I've created something new, so that is fair use. But I'm going to say this. If I go into Walmart this afternoon, okay, and I take my big coat with me, and I walk around Walmart, and I put some flour inside the coat, and a few eggs, and maybe some butter. The store detective, now they've seen me, and I know they've seen me, so I run out of that store like Billy-O, and I'm going along the car park, and they're chasing me, but I get in the car, and I get away. Okay, I've got my butter, I've got my flour, I've got my eggs, but he sees my number plate, and pretty much an hour later, there's a knock at the door. And there's the store detective with a bobby, or a cop, as you'd probably say. And they say, right, we're arresting you. You stole flour, you stole eggs, you stole butter from Walmart. Come on, put handcuffs on. And I say, well, hang on a minute. Here's my cake. I haven't got any butter or eggs in that because actually I made a cake. It's a new thing, it's mine. So I haven't broken the law, have I? I haven't done anything wrong because I've created something new.
Well, you're talking about derivative works, and well, depending upon where you're living in America, you could have probably taken 3 or 4 more sacks of flour, and they wouldn't have come out. Okay. So maybe even a couple of dozen eggs. I heard that in some municipalities, if you take less than $1,000 worth of stuff, they're not going to stop you. So who knows? But that's just one thing. Okay, now depending upon where some people get their imagery, and for a while I was responsible for negotiating rates with some of the stock houses for some publications and books that I would have to do the pre-press on. I would do the pre-press of the images before they went to press. So I had an opportunity to look at a lot of legalese. A lot of the photo agencies now have written in their contracts that even if you do make a derivative, you still can't claim that derivative being 100% yours because you use someone else's property to make that derivative. So that alligator that you were talking about, say for instance you took that from one of the larger stock houses online and you grabbed that guy and you just stuck him in there and you go, okay, here's my crocodile in that. They can come after you and they can get their pound of flesh from you. Okay. Because again, when you go on the website, they clearly say this website is, for commercial use, and by using it, you agree not to take any of the images. And, now some agencies are allowing you to take some low resolution imagery so that you can use it for comps and such. But they know that the low image stuff's not going to work when you go to print. So they hope that, by them being generous and letting you use low resolution imagery so you could do your comps, you'll go back to them and say, well, that picture looked the best and it worked the best, so we're going to pay. And, depending upon the size, depending upon the print run, depending upon the languages, depending upon whether it's going to be on the cover or inside or whatever, you have to negotiate those rates. But again, you're still bound by the agreements of the contract that says that even though you're putting this in a book or on a cover or wherever, we still own that image. You're just paying for the usage, the licensing for a specific period of time or for a specific language or for a specific part of the world, depending upon who you use. And again, they did that purposely early in the internet's life because they saw people pulling these images off and using these images as their own and making derivatives of some of these images. And again, saying that, well, I made this change, so now this new thing is mine. Well, they got a bunch of lawyers in a room to fix that.
Yeah,
so,
well, I don't. It's difficult to know how much it's fixed. I mean, I've got a couple of pictures of famous faces, portraits I've done of famous people, and when I've dropped them onto the Google search bar and it does an image search, they've been used illegally without any fee. All over the world, people just steal from.
Sure. I mean, all the people that I photographed at the institution that I worked at, a lot of people were high-level government officials, and I would go on to various informational websites on the internet, and boom, there would be my picture. Now, granted, it wasn't my picture. The institution that I worked for owned the copyright, but by us relinquishing that picture on out to the web for news use, people just said, okay, it's fair use. You guys are putting it out there for people to use. We'll take it and we'll use it.
Yeah, but that and therein lies a massive question. By putting it in public space, does that mean you are relinquishing any claim to copyright or authorship or use of it? I mean, I think the AI bot was right. We need to have a discussion about that. I think my son was telling me yesterday when I mentioned that we were going to be chatting about this, and he would have liked to have joined us, but unfortunately he has a job and couldn't be here for this. Do you remember that, Mike?
Yeah, I remember that. 40 to 50 hours, sometimes 60 to 70 hours a week.
Well,
this kid was atrophied from holding a camera for all those years.
He was saying that he was reading that there's some organisation, big corporate organisation. I can't remember who he said. It might have been like somebody like Adobe or somebody like that, or one of the camera manufacturers or something. It is, but I can't remember exactly who it was. He said, but they're starting to say now, if you use our product, if you sign up to us and use our product, we are creating our own library of images. And there are millions of people around the world. It's a big company using, I can't remember, was it Google, or was it Adobe, or was it some huge sort of company? And they're saying, if you'll sign up to us, we are going to have like an image library that you can, tick a box, check a box to say, yeah, you want all your stuff uploaded into this. And then when the bots scrape images, if one of them comes from theirs, there will be a small, tiny, I would imagine, nominal fee. So obviously they're going to make some money out of it, but you'll get some streaming down to you too. So they're already thinking about it. These big companies are already thinking about I mean, I'd like to think it came from the view that robots scraping images off the internet and using them without consent is not right. I happen to think it probably a little bit more about how can we make some money out of this.
Well, Phil, that your son is just scraping the surface, because years
Really?
ago there was a very large, and they're still very large. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but people that are our age that worked with them will know. There was a contract that you signed when you were if you did editorial photography for these individuals, that said that they owned the image that you as a freelancer shot for them universally in perpetuity.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I get a lot of people asking me to sign that, Michael.
Yeah, and why
I
do you
get a
think
lot
they're
of
doing it?
Yeah, I get a lot of companies saying, "Oh, can you do this job for me?" I'm a freelance, so people come to me, and large companies say, "Oh, I mean, I've even had like colleges and whatnot say, "Oh, can you come and shoot our prospectus?" And they send me this thing to sign, and basically, when you read it, it says that every image you shot, you sign over the entire copyright to us. You don't own the image anymore. And that seems kind of weird. I tend not to do those jobs. I tend to say, no, look, I don't mind you having a claim on the copyright. You can use it for whatever purposes you want to because you have a claim on the copyright. But I'm not giving my negatives away. That's essentially what you're asking me to do. Sort of say, no, I have no claim on this, even though I came up with the concept, even though I thought of the picture, even though I created the background and the lighting, even though I integrated with the subject at the shoot, and created the image and the feel and the mood. You want it to have nothing to do with me whatsoever. You want to just take it away and say, no, that's ours. Well, I don't sign those contracts.
Well, I'm glad that you don't, but unfortunately, that should be the way that it's done. But I guarantee you that there are photographers that sign that in a minute. And again, that's one of the reasons why there's certain types of photography that I don't do anymore. I used to enjoy shooting music. And, then all of a sudden you can only shoot these 3 songs. And then there was some people that actually said, well, if you shoot these, then we want copies, and we are going to join you on the on the copyright. And it's like, wait a second, I paid for the film, I'm paying for the processing, and I drove here and I had to make 10 phone calls to make this happen, and you wanted me here because you know what I can bring to the table as far as my style of photography, and now all of a sudden you want to be my partner when you've done this and I've done everything else. I stopped that. And again, there's young people signing those contracts, young people relinquishing digital imagery to multimillionaires because it's cool to shoot music. Well, 20 years from now, when these people are retired and living wherever they're living in their $1 million homes, and it's time for you to retire, and there's some magazines or some videos that are coming out, and they call you and say, hey, we heard a rumor that you did a couple of shows from these people. We'd like to pay you to use some of these images for our video, for our book, for whatever, and we've got the management company of the band that you photographed, that they're all behind this. Well, now you don't have anything because you've already given it away. And the monies that you would have made to help you through your retirement are going to those multimillionaires that have the houses over in the south of France. So
So we're saying that we should have seen this. We should have seen this coming, shouldn't we? We should have seen it coming.
Well, I think it's an extension. It's an extension of the rights grab that big companies do to the little guy for years and years and years. So
yeah, absolutely. So, do you know what? I think we've done nearly an hour and we've barely scratched the surface, have we? Really, when it comes to AI. I think any one of the things that we've talked about, the good things, the streamlining workflow, image enhancement tools, facial recognition, surveillance, artistic tools, all that kind of good stuff, and then the frightening stuff. The ethics. Oh, we haven't even touched on job displacement. Where photographers are thinking that graphic designers aren't going to really need them much anymore, to create posters and magazine covers and whatnot. So point of sale stuff. Are they really going to need photographers when they can just ask AI to create that picture of give me a model, make sure they're wearing a green dress, make sure it's knee length. Can you put a busy store behind? Can you make sure the store's got blue lighting? It can create it in AI. So, the photographer is going to be needed less and less.
I don't know. I think there's always going to be something uniquely in the world, a person, a place, a thing that someone's going to need to photograph. I don't think that photographers are going to be, I don't think photography is going to be a large profession anymore. I'm sure that it's going to dwindle even more because of this. But there's always going to be people that are going to be at the different levels that are going to be able to fill a niche. And I think, it's going to hurt the business, no doubt, but and it's not going to help expand the business either. But it's going to be an interesting ride. Thankfully, you and I don't have to really worry about hitting the front lines as hard as we used to when we were younger.
No, I know. Yeah, but let's the things we've discussed. Let's go back to those basic questions. Let's see if we got anywhere amongst ourselves. Let's see if we've got a one-line answer to: does AI steal images?
I'm still out on that one. I can't formulate an answer from the information that I have. I'm sure that it borrows.
I think it does steal images. Personally, I think it steals images. The question is, should it be allowed to steal the images? Can we do anything about it? The AI was talking about, can we come up with some system of metadata marking that tells people whether an image is real or not, that actually people can't get into and take out. So in the metadata, somehow in the file info, it'll say this is AI generated and not an original picture. Going back,
I think that's a worthy thing to do. Yes.
Is free speech, is news gathering in danger from AI?
I think news photos are in danger. I mean, you saw what happened with the Pope picture.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think it is a danger.
Yeah, no question.
I think so. So and we're going to go back to the initial question, the question from the beginning. Okay, yes or no? Is AI good or bad for photographs?
Again, after everything that we said, with the pros and the cons that we've rolled out, I'm still kind of stuck in the middle on the issue. I guess I'll let you know if it steals any of my Metallica images.
Yeah. And listen, I'd have to say, if you push me, I'd say bad. And the reason I'd say bad is I think there were good parts to AI, and I think there were some bad parts to AI. However, I think even just on the potential for news gathering and misinformation, it's so huge compared to the good part, streaming a workflow for a photographer. It's just like one thing has that much importance. The other, you can't even see my hand. It is so hugely important. I'd have to say, on the balance of probability at the moment, unless things change, unless internationals and governments and the tech companies about putting metadata, tags on that can't be taken off, unless something is done at the moment, I think the potential for bad is too much.
When you put it in that parameter, I have to agree with you. But if you give me more space, like I said, I'm still in the middle of the road. I mean, again, it opens up a lot of possibilities for creativity, but it also opens up a lot of possibilities for some scurrilous things that you really can't allow because it'll cause some serious damage.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. So I think we've got a little way forward. If anybody would like to expand this discussion, then we come back to this and actually add some things, because we're no expert. We're just a couple of sort of old photographers that remember the film days. AI is completely and utterly new to us. So if what we're discussing is so on the base level that you feel you need to enlighten us a little bit, leave a comment, because there's a whole lot of people going to be interested in your comments on this. If you've got any knowledge of it, please leave a comment. And like I said before, this isn't about views. It's about getting out there and sharing the talk, because I think as many people as possible need to get this information.
I agree. This is not the end all be all discussion, folks. I'm sure that this thing is going to be, it's going to have a life of its own, more so sooner rather than later. And I think that we have to open up a really big discussion with a lot of free flowing dialogue, so that powers that be can make decisions that are going to help and protect everybody involved. So, and again,
we need
leave
to get as
comments.
many people talking about this.
Yeah, leave comments for Phil. Don't call us at home. Leave comments for Phil.
Leave comments in the comment section below. Look, I'm not going to monetize this video. It isn't about me, making money on this. Absolutely, I'm going to make sure it's not monetized, so that you can sort of share it and get the discussion going, and leave comments, because I think it's a really, really important issue. And I think we need to get as many people discussing it. I know AI is being discussed, but I don't think AI for photographs and the photography implications and the imaging implications are necessarily being discussed very much at all. And particularly with news gathering, it literally has the potential to pull down governments. It's that powerful, I think.
I think that news photography has to remain sacrosanct from any of this AI. I don't think that it should be allowed anywhere near it.
And on that upbeat note, we're going to say it was great discussing this, Michael. It was, as ever, great discussing this. Oh, and also, if there's any subjects that anybody like a couple of old photographers to sit down and discuss, leave us a comment, and say, let's get discussing this subject or this subject. It would be great. It would be great to have ideas of anything that anybody's interested in a couple of old duffers chatting about.
I'd be happy to discuss whatever comes up.
Hey, listen, great talking as ever, Michael, and look forward to the next chat. And,
Same to you, Phil. See ya.
I wish you well, and see you soon.
Thank you. Take care.